Good evening, President Ewing, Vice President Riddle, members of the board, Superintendent Placencia, and members of the community. My name is Dr. Jonathan Brown, Director of Assessment and Data for Waukegan Public Schools. Tonight, I will review our students' performance on our recent Illinois state assessments. The Illinois state assessments we will focus on for tonight are the Access for ELs assessment, the College Board's PSAT and SAT assessments, and the Illinois Assessment of Readiness, or IAR assessment. The most recent scores are from the 2021-22 school year administration. To provide some context, we will show some historical data alongside the most recent data. Here we see a timeline of major assessment events over the past 2 years. This will help to explain some of the gaps you will see in later slides. Back in the spring of 2020, school was closed due to COVID, and all state assessments were canceled after March. In the fall of 2020, we started the year with remote instruction. Despite beginning the year remotely, the State Board of Education provided an opportunity for seniors to participate in an in-person SAT administration for post-secondary purposes. This was for those seniors that missed out on taking the SAT their junior year in the spring of 2020. In the spring of 2021, some students returned to in-person learning. The State Board of Education gave districts the opportunity to postpone state testing until the fall. Waukegan postponed administering assessments until the fall. In the fall of 2021, students slowly began returning to full in-person learning, and the postponed spring 2021 assessments were administered right away in August and September. In the spring of 2022, as almost all students returned to in-person instruction, state assessments were administered following the normal spring schedule. In the fall of 2022, all students are expected to attend in person, and a regular schedule of state assessments will be followed. Let's start with our Access for ELs English Proficiency Exam results. The Access test measures English learners' social and academic proficiency in English. There are 4 domains assessed: reading, listening, writing, and speaking. The Access test is based on the WIDA standards for English language proficiency and is written to measure students' language abilities up to college and career readiness levels. All English learners in grades K through 12 are required to be assessed yearly until the student tests as English language proficient. A composite score of at least 4.8 indicates proficiency in English. Students new to the state are assessed in the spring and given a plan with yearly targets to measure their progress to proficiency in English. Access is an online adaptive test for students in grades 1 through 12 and a paper-pencil one-to-one test for students in kindergarten and those taking the alternate Access test. Here we have a graph depicting the proportions of students scoring in each of the 6 levels of the Access test since 2018. Each color represents a different level of performance. Recall that a level of 4.8 or higher is what is needed to be deemed English proficient. That would include a portion of the green, all of the blue, and all of the dark blue. With Access, 2020 was the last year of testing prior to COVID because it was administered prior to March of that year. Student performance on Access was consistent prior to COVID. 2021 results are from the fall of that year, with nearly 1,000 fewer students participating. 2022 results are preliminary, but represent where our students are performing now across the district. We will work to expand the proportions of students scoring in the top 3 levels of Access over the course of the next few years. Now, let's turn to our students' performance on the College Board's assessment suite. Waukegan has expanded the use of College Board assessments above what is required by the state of Illinois. We administer the assessments to all students in grades 8 through 11. In grades 8 and 9, students take the PSAT 8-9. In grades 10 and 11, students take the PSAT 10 or NMSQT. In grades 11 and 12, students take the SAT. All of the tests are designed to follow a similar format, measuring incremental growth towards college readiness. Each test measures more advanced content. Each one can be considered a practice test for the next and ultimately for the SAT. Students receive two main types of scores, the math section score and the evidence-based reading and writing section score. Both of those scores together make up the total score for a student. This applies to all of the tests mentioned on this slide. The College Board uses 3 performance bands to describe the results: red, yellow, and green. We will refer to them as below the benchmark, approaching the benchmark, and met or exceeded the benchmark. Students that score below the benchmark performance band are estimated to be performing at a level that is more than 1 year's academic growth behind expectations. Students that score in the approaching performance band are estimated to be performing at a level that is within 1 year's academic growth of expectations. Students that score in the green performance band have met or exceeded expectations. Students that meet or exceed the benchmark have a 75% chance of earning at least a C in the first semester credit-bearing college courses in math, literature, or social studies. If being prepared for college and having the ability to earn at least a C in typical first semester courses is expected, then scoring in the green performance band by grade 11 is the goal that students should aim for. Students begin testing in grade 8 and can track their progress twice a year through grade 11 using the College Board assessments. Before we move on to the next slide, I want to point out the chart at the top and how it details the cut scores for each of the performance levels, as well as how they increase for each test. These are cut scores advancing toward the college readiness benchmark. Here we start with math score performance for students in grades 8 and 9. Students in grade 8 take the test once in the fall, while students in grade 9 take the test in the fall and in the spring. Students in grade 9 have a higher benchmark or cut score than students in grade 8, even though the test is the same. The black horizontal line is there to acknowledge that there are differences in the expectations for each grade. 15% of students in grade 8 met or exceeded the math benchmark in the fall. The percentage of 9th graders meeting or exceeding the math benchmark improved from 12 to 13% by the end of the school year. Here we have students in grades 10 and 11. The percentage of students in grade 10 that met or exceeded the math benchmark remained at 7% between the fall and spring, but the percentage of students approaching the benchmark increased from 7 to 12%. Between the fall and spring, grade 10 students take the same test. Grade 11 students take the same test as grade 10 students in the fall, the PSAT, but with higher expectations or benchmarks. In the spring, grade 11 students take the SAT with even higher expectations or benchmarks than the fall test. In the fall, 8% of grade 11 students met or exceeded College Board benchmarks in math. In the spring, on the SAT, 9% met or exceeded College Board benchmarks in math. Again, this is a higher bar than the fall benchmark. That same spring, only 4% of students approached the grade 11 benchmark, while 8% approached the benchmark on the fall PSAT. Grade 11 is the only grade level that has increasing benchmarks during the school year because it takes 2 different tests. While the benchmark expectation increased between fall and spring for grade 11, we still expect to see similar, if not a larger percentage of students scoring in the met or exceeded performance level from fall to spring. Now let's move on to our students' performance on the evidence-based reading and writing portion of the test. We've labeled it as ELA. 30% of students in grade 8 met or exceeded College Board benchmarks in the fall of last year. On that same test requiring higher expectations, 31% of ninth graders met or exceeded expectations in ELA. By the end of the year, the percentage of students in every performance level improved. The top two levels increased and the lowest level decreased. This is the type of pattern we want to see every year within a grade level as well as between grade levels. As students move from 8th to 9th to 10th and above, we want to see the progress of the cohort with every performance level improve. Here we have students in grades 10 and 11. Every performance level of students in grade 10 improved between fall and spring, with 23% of students meeting or exceeding the college readiness benchmark for grade 10. Students in grade 11 took the same test as the 10th graders in the fall, but with a higher benchmark. 25% of students met or exceeded the grade 11 benchmark for the PSAT, with 13% approaching the benchmark. In the spring, on the SAT, 22% of grade 11 students met or exceeded the college readiness benchmark set by the College Board. This again is a higher benchmark than what was required of grade 11 students from the fall. Grade 11 is the only grade level that has increasing benchmarks during the school year because they take two different tests. As we track student performance on the College Board tests post-COVID, we will view them in cohort fashion. The class of 2025, the class of 2026, and so on, as an example. Lastly, let's take a look at our state assessment for grades 3 through 8, the Illinois Assessment of Readiness, or IAR. The IAR was created to replace the Park Assessment. However, scores are comparable across the two tests. The IAR is administered over multiple days in the subject areas of math and English language arts. First, we see our students' performance in math since 2015. The very top row shows the percentage of students meeting or exceeding standards in grades 3 through 8 combined. The rows beneath show each grade level individually. The columns detail performance by year. Recall that in the spring of 2020, assessments were canceled and the following year they were postponed until the fall. Only the overall percentage of students meeting or exceeding standards in math is reported for the 2021 year. This is to give us an idea of student performance of those that chose to come back to test in aggregate. As we disaggregate the grade levels, the counts of students tested become smaller and are not suggested to be used in comparisons. In 2022, the test results are preliminary results, but are useful to serve as a baseline of where we are post-COVID. 9.6% of students met or exceeded standards in math in 2022. That is at about 60% of the level of where our students were performing in 2019 prior to school closures. In the College Board segment, I mentioned the desire to track cohorts over time. This chart allows you to see cohorts of students' performance on IAR over time. Each cohort is color-coded where you can follow diagonally their performance from one grade level to the next. As an example, in 2019, 24.9% of third graders met or exceeded standards in math. 3 years later, in 2022, there were 3.4% of students in that cohort, now in grade 6, meeting or exceeding standards in math. Student performance from 3rd to 5th grade each year showed a pattern of decreasing percentages up until school year 2018. In the middle grades, the percentage of students meeting or exceeding in math showed overall increases from 6th grade ending in 8th grade. Lastly, let's review IER performance in ELA since 2015. Again, the first row shows the percentage of students that met or exceeded in aggregate. The rows beneath show individual grade level performance. Years 2020 and 2021 are noted and do not show grade level data. Overall, 12.2% of students in grades 3 through 8 met or exceeded standards in ELA. This is at 63% of our 2019 level, but lower than our 2015 initial level. Individually, grade 5 students had the highest percentage meeting or exceeding standards with about 15%, followed closely by students in grades 4 and 3 with just under 14% each. 6th grade had the fewest students meeting or exceeding standards in ELA with 8.2%. Following cohort performance diagonally, we see each elementary cohort making gains in each year in grades 3 through 5. More significant gains began to appear with the 2017 elementary cohort. From 2015 on, each middle school cohort increased overall in the percentage of students meeting or exceeding standards by the spring of 8th grade. Looking forward to Destination 2028, here are a few of the important planned and ongoing actions that district and school personnel are working on. Ongoing enhancements to the curricula in the areas of math and ELA or SLA, especially in grades K through 8. Alignment with Common Core and college anchor standards. The continuation of phonics instruction in the primary grades. Support for building teacher practice and formative assessment as outlined in our keynote address this year. The strategic use of bag reports in middle and high school. Goal setting for major state assessment performance like the PSAT, SAT, and IAR. Goal setting for course performance utilizing common final exams. And lastly, building up district-wide PBIS. These are just a few of the things being worked on by district and school personnel this year, all in an effort to help more students succeed and prepare for the next step in their educational journey in Waukegan Public Schools. Do you have any questions?